In a city where chaos rules, only one man can save humanity from total destruction.
Around the days of the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a strange explosion of licensed video games that essentially took over the market in the worst way possible. Before the days of smartphones and apps, many studios and companies saw the popularity of video games and decided to use the industry as either a way to expand their brand or simply market it to an impressionable audience. It didn't matter what you were, an upcoming movie, an anime or cartoon, a board game, a Disney or Nickelodeon sitcom, or even a fast food chain. If you even just existed during that time period, you would have a video game made about you. But most licensed games are often criticized for their low quality, or how rushed they often were to still be relevant with their respective property. In some rare occasions, though, we got licensed games that were pretty good for what they were. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, Simpsons Hit and Run, and Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi are just a few to name.
You got 10 minutes, Gramps.
Yeah.
As an instant hit that premiered in 2005, a game based on Cartoon Network's Ben 10 was of course made to go along with the show. This resulted in 2007's Ben 10 Protector of Earth, released on PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, the Nintendo Wii, and an alternate version of the game for the Nintendo DS. For this video, I will be focusing on the main console version of the game. Does Ben 10 Protector of Earth stand on its own alongside SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom or Hit and Run? Or does it repeat the same formula of Video Game the Game Unpolished Edition starring famous character that the past eras were absolutely filled with? Well, let's find out here on Ben 10 The Legacy. While Ben is sleeping, a mini Vilgax drone flies into the rust bucket and saps several samples of DNA from the Omnitrix. When Ben wakes up, he wonders what's wrong with the device, as many of Ben's worst enemies come back to haunt him. The Forever Knights, Kevin 11, Ghost Freak, Dr. Animo, and several others, some by chance and others seemingly working alongside a greater force, as many of them were powered up by Omnitrix crystals. These crystals are filled with DNA from the Omnitrix, acting as a power source to whoever is in possession of it. Ben, alongside his grandfather Max and cousin Gwen, must drive through the country as they restore the Omnitrix and solve this mystery. The story almost feels like a special or straight-to-TV movie plot that they could have made with how much is in this game. New and old locations, familiar threats in almost every level, leading to a giant finale involving Earth being slowly absorbed into the null void. They did not have to go through this kind of effort, could have just slapped together a simple story, but I fully appreciate what they chose instead. Even the writing and the cutscenes feel similar to the show, as the original voice actors also reprised their roles.
To stop the Forever Knights is to deprive the Earth of its last, best hope.
Enoch doesn't offer hope to anyone but himself.
We should find him before he makes a bad situation even worse.
Not only this, but for being a late PS2 and early Wii title, the game looks fantastic, taking a cel-shaded look with black outlines. However, backgrounds are given smaller outlines and more textures. You can tell that they were trying to recreate the show's art style in a 3D environment, and they absolutely nailed it. They even used music from the show for different stages and fights. It really does feel like Ben 10 in video game form, rather than just generic games starring Ben Tennyson. Though the only thing I'd say looks bad is the cutscenes. Characters look more stiff, as their faces are either just 2D textures that are incredibly choppy, or mouths that look like Muppets that just flap around. The game looks better in action, as the textured faces are farther from the screen, making it look less obvious and jarring. But doing some research, I discovered that the PSP version is a massive downgrade in the visuals. The outline of the characters were removed, so the models almost look incomplete. I guess there was some limitation that came with the PSP, or maybe just some issue that came from putting the game on the system, as most likely the game wasn't developed with the PSP in mind. I'd bet the PS2 or Wii versions were more the primary focus of the game. The game itself is a 3D styled beat 'em up with some minor platforming. You face some enemies, and once they're done, you continue through the stage as you rinse and repeat. You start off each stage as Ben, and while he can fight on his own, there is no reason to, as he's the weakest character to play as. That's where the Omnitrix comes in. You can turn Ben into his alien heroes, but you only start with two, being Heat Blast and Forearms. Not only are these good choices due to their popularity, but also as they show off the differences that come with each form. Heat Blast is the all-around character with a heavy emphasis on projectiles, some of which can light enemies on fire, causing constant damage. He can glide and absorb fire around him. Forearms is a slow but beefy tank. His moves are slower and leave him wide open with massive end lag, but the damage they can do is massive. He can also throw boulders as a special, and move heavy objects. Speaking of projectiles, I've noticed if you use a ranged move that you're not stuck firing in the direction that you activated the move, as you can even change the direction while the startup animation is playing. That's something that I really love and wish more games took advantage of. Most likely it was an oversight in development, but much like the wave dash in Melee or the back long jump in Super Mario 64, it's one that I'm glad snuck in. You have a light attack, heavy attack, special move, the ability to block, and double jump. As you beat enemies, you gain experience used to unlock other moves accessed through button combinations. Many of these moves are deadly and also fun to look at. Once again, for the time, the specials look great. You most likely won't have all of these moves unlocked by the end of the game, unless you return to earlier stages, as there were just that many. But I wouldn't rely on these moves, as the more powerful a move is, the more energy you consume from the Omnitrix. Much like in the show, Ben can only be in alien form for so long, as a timer goes down. Using powerful attacks and combo moves uses more energy and gives you less time. This actually gives you a reason as to why you would use light moves over heavy moves, rather than just the power and speed difference. Once you lose all of your energy, you turn back into Ben, and can't go hero again until the Omnitrix recharges. My advice? Just use Ben's special, which is a Kingdom Hearts style dodge roll, and circle around the enemies until you can transform again. Thankfully, it doesn't take that long to recharge and get back into battle. If you lose all of your health in alien form, you instantly turn back into Ben. You can only truly die if you fall off a cliff or lose all of your health as Ben.
I just wanted to go hero.
But there is no life system, as all that happens is that you're sent back to an earlier part in the stage, so there isn't that much of a consequence for losing. There are also power-ups hidden throughout the stage, some that regenerate health and Omnitrix energy, some that give you extra power, invincibility, and so on. There are also 3 Sumo Slammer cards hidden as well. Unlocking them all in a stage unlocks a video clip you can watch of a certain transformation from the show. Don't bother trying to collect the Sumo Slammer cards until you've unlocked the other transformations, as some require you to return to earlier stages with these additional forms. These other forms are Accelerate, the fastest alien with a special that allows him to slow down time and create a track for himself to blast through, causing multiple hits and tossing weaker enemies in the air. Cannonbolt, who rolls into a ball to rev up these ramps, and he's actually the best transformation in the game, as many of his unlockable moves completely destroy enemies and bosses. Dr. Animo was a joke, not because of the boss itself, but because of how overpowered Cannonbolt really is. He's your main man if you want to get through this game quickly. Lastly, there's Wildfine, who has the best physical range, covers the most area, and can grapple around with these spiked balls in the air. But Wildfine isn't the last thing that you unlock, as throughout the game you can even unlock the ability to switch between transformations, but unfortunately you still obey the limiter. But that's okay, as shortly after, you unlock Master Control. Not only can you switch between transformations, but can stay as them for as long as you want, regardless of what move you use, but losing all of your health still reverts you back to Ben. This was every kid's dream back then, not only to use the Omnitrix, but also to its fullest potential. This was one of those games that gave you more toys to play with as you progressed through it. But the only downside is that the game gets a little repetitive sometimes. It can be annoying to fight a few enemies just to take 10 steps forward and be locked in another fight. Maybe if the game allowed you to skip some fights, it would be balanced, as you wouldn't get the experience or maybe even lose some rewards if you just ran past them. But it's not that bad, as there's a lot of enemy variety. Each couple of stages has you face certain enemy types, which are also hints towards the boss you're about to face soon. Monster aliens from Season 3, Ghost Freak. Mutants, Dr. Animo. Forever Knights, Enoch. The only enemies you'll face consistently are Vilgax's drones, which you'll see throughout the entire game. A lot of these enemies aren't hard to deal with, but they can easily overwhelm you if you're not careful, especially since you can still receive damage after you've been knocked out. There are no invincibility frames, which can make things a little annoying and may even result in some cheap deaths. Bosses are a mixed bag, as some are surprisingly challenging, while others are annoying or aren't that interesting. After you reduce an enemy's health down, you have to use a reaction command sequence to finish them off. But you can only start the sequence as Ben. Some of the best bosses include Kevin, Enoch, Clancy, Hex, and Vilgax. Ghost Freak is annoying though, and Enoch in his mech, which is on the cover by the way, is boring and time consuming. Despite those minor issues, the game is actually pretty good, especially when you take into consideration the era this game was made in and the trend of licensed games. It may not be brought up on the same level as SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom or Simpsons Hit and Run, but it's still a fun game that just gets a little tiring sometimes. There would be more Ben 10 games in the future, but those are more like the blander licensed games as they're a huge step back in quality. While I haven't played the Omniverse or Reboot games, I think I can safely say that Ben 10 Protector of Earth is the best Ben 10 game in the franchise. And if you find it in a retro video game store, be sure to pick it up and tell Cartoon Network to remaster it.